Definitions of precisely what an APT is can vary, but can be summarized by their named requirements. Advanced operators behind the threat have a full spectrum of intelligence gathering techniques at their disposal. These may include commercial and open source computer intrusion technologies and techniques, but may also extend to include the intelligence apparatus of a state. While individual components of the attack may not be considered particularly advanced, for example, the malware components generated from commonly available DIYs, malware construction kits, or the use of easily procured exploit materials, the operators can typically access and develop more advanced tools as required. They often combine multiple targeting methods, tools, and techniques in order to reach and compromise their target and maintain access to it. Operators may also demonstrate a deliberate focus on operational security that differentiates them from less advanced threats. The persistent part, we look at operators that have specific objectives rather than opportunistically seeking information for financial or other gains. This distinction implies that the attackers are guided by external entities. The targeting is conducted through continuous monitoring and interaction in order to achieve the defined objectives. It does not mean a barrage of constant attacks and malware updates. In fact, a very low and slow approach is usually more successful. If the operator loses access to the target, they usually will reattempt access, and most often successfully. One of the operator's goals is to maintain long-term access to the target, in contrast to threats who only need access to execute a specific task. The APTs pose the kind of threats because they have both the capability and the intent and the motivation. So APT attacks are executed by coordinated human actions rather than by mindless and automated pieces of code. The operators have a specific objective and are skilled, motivated, organized, and well-funded. Actors are not just limited to state-sponsored groups. A brief history of the evolution of APTs. We have to go back to the year 2005 when warnings against targeted socially engineered emails dropping Trojans to exfiltrate sensitive information were published by United Kingdom and United States computer emergency response teams. This was way back in 2005. This method was used throughout the early 1990s and does not in itself constitute an APT because the term advanced persistent threat has been cited as originating from the United States Air Force in the year 2006, with Colonel Greg Rattray cited as the individual who coined the term. However, the term APT was used with telecommunications carriers throughout previous years. We've also seen that within the computer security community and increasingly within the media, the term is almost used as in reference to long-term pattern of sophisticated computer network exploitation aimed at governments, companies, and political activists, and by extension, also to ascribe the A, P, and T attributes to the groups behind these attacks. Advanced persistent threat as a term may be shifting focus to computer-based hacking due to the rising number of occurrences. PC World reported that around 81% increase from the year 2010 to 2011 of particularly advanced targeted computer attacks. Actors in many countries have used cyberspace as a means to gather intelligence on individuals and groups of individuals of interest. The United States Cyber Command is tasked with coordinating the U.S. military's offensive and defensive cyber operations. Numerous sources have alleged that some APT groups have been affiliated with or are agents of governments of sovereign states. Businesses holding a large quantity of personally identifiable information also are at risk of being targeted by advanced persistent threat groups, including higher education institutions, financial institutions, energy, transportation, technology, healthcare, telecommunications, manufacturing, and agriculture. Bell Canada study provided deep research into the anatomy of APTs and uncovered the widespread presence in Canadian government critical infrastructure. The actors behind advanced persistent threats create a growing and changing risk to organizations' financial assets, intellectual property, and reputation by following a continuous process or a kill chain. They target specific organizations for a singular objective. They attempt to gain a foothold in the environment. Common tactics include spear phishing, emails, etc. They use the compromised systems as access into the target network. They deploy additional tools that help fulfill the attack objective, and they cover the tracks to maintain access for future initiatives. The global landscape of APTs from all sources is sometimes referred to in the singular as the APT, as are references to the actor behind a specific incident or series of incidents, but the definition of APT includes both actors and the methods. Some of the modus operandi used by the APT actors can be looked at through the life cycle called the APT life cycle. The first step can be an initial compromise, which is performed by the use of social engineering and spear phishing over email using zero-day viruses. Another popular infection method was planting malware on a website that the victim employees will likely visit. They also establish foothold through by planting remote administrative software in the victim's network, create internet backdoors and tunnels, allowing stealth access to its infrastructure. They sometimes escalate privileges. They use exploits and password cracking to acquire administrator privileges over the victim's computer and possibly expand it to other Windows domain administrative accounts. Internal reconnaissance. Internal reconnaissance is nothing but to collect information on surrounding infrastructure, trust relationships, and the operating system domain structure. And lateral movements. Lateral movements, they expand control to other workstations, servers, and infrastructure elements and perform data harvesting on them. And to maintain their presence continually, they ensure continued control over access channels and credentials acquired in previous attempts and basking in previous successes. And they complete their mission by exfiltrating stolen data from the victim's network. These incidents have been analyzed by Mandiant. The average period over which the attackers controlled the victim's network was 1 year, and the longest was 5 years. Now, some of the popular mitigation strategies can be, right now there are tens of millions of malware variations, which makes it extremely challenging to protect organizations from ATP. While APT activities are stealthy and hard to detect, the command and control network traffic associated with APT can be detected at the network layer level with sophisticated methods. Deep log analysis and log correlation from various sources is sometimes of limited usefulness in detecting APT activities. It is also challenging to separate noises from legitimate traffic, getting rid of the false positives, and the traditional security technology and methods have been ineffective in detecting or mitigating APTs. So active, proactive cyber defense has often yielded greater efficacy in detecting and prosecuting APTs, finding, fixing, and finishing their CNC command and control centers when applying cyber threat intelligence to hunt and adversely cripple their activities.
The field of cyber has become quite significant due to the increased reliance on computer systems, the internet, wireless network standards such as Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and due to the growth of smart devices, including smartphones, televisions, and various devices that constitute the Internet of Things. Owing to its complexity both in terms of politics and technology, cybersecurity is one of the major challenges in the contemporary world. It was early in the year 1967, there was a session organized by Willis Ware at the Spring Joint Computer Conference, and followed by the publication of the Ware Report. This was the first foundational moment in the history of the field of computer security, Ware's work straddled the intersection of material, cultural, political, and social concerns. When we talk about vulnerabilities and attacks, it is nothing but weakness in design, implementation, operation, or internal control. Most of the vulnerabilities that have been discovered and documented are in the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures database. An exploitable vulnerability is one in which at least one working attack or exploit exists. Vulnerabilities can be researched, reverse engineered, hunted, or exploited using automated tools or customized scripts. To secure a computer system, it is important to understand the attacks that can be made against it. And these threats can typically be classified into the following categories. We can call them a backdoor, a denial of service attack, direct access attacks, eavesdropping, multi-vector polymorphic attacks. Then we have phishing, we have privilege escalation, we have reverse engineering, social engineering, spoofing, the different types of spoofing, there's tampering, then we have malware. So all these are, some of these are categories that can be dealt with in detail. Now, a backdoor is a computer system or a crypto system, like an algorithm, which is any secret method of bypassing normal authentication or security controls. They may exist for many reasons, including by original design or from poor configuration. They may have been added by an authorized party to allow some legitimate access or by an attacker for malicious reasons. But regardless of the motives for their existence, they create a vulnerability. Backdoors can be very hard to detect, and detection of backdoors is usually discovered by someone who has access to application source code or intimate knowledge of operating system of the computer. A denial of service attack A denial of service attack or DOS attacks are designed to make a machine or network resource unavailable to its intended users. Attackers can deny service to individual victims, such as by deliberately entering a wrong password enough consecutive times to cause the victim's account to be locked. Or they may overload the capabilities of a machine or network and block all users at once, while a network attack from a single IP address can be blocked by adding a new firewall rule. Many forms of distributed denial of service or DDoS attacks are possible, where the attack comes from a large number of points and defending is much more difficult. Such attacks can originate from the zombie computers of a botnet or from a range of other possible techniques, including a reflection and amplification of attacks where innocent systems are flooded into sending traffic to the victim. When we look at direct access attacks, they are a form of unauthorized user gaining physical access to a computer, which is most likely able to directly copy data from it. They may also compromise security by making operating system modifications, installing software worms, keyloggers, covert listening devices, or using wireless microphone. Even when the system is protected by standard security measures, these may be able to be bypassed by the booting of another OS onto the device or tool from a CD-ROM or flash drive or the bootable media. Disk encryption and trusted platform module are designed in different ways to prevent some of these attacks. Eavesdropping is an act of surreptitiously listen to a private computer conversation, typically between hosts on a network. For instance, programs have been initiated where the machines that operate as a closed system with no contact to the outside world can be eavesdropped upon by monitoring the faint electromagnetic transmissions generated by the hardware. We can look at multi-vector polymorphic attacks, which were first identified in the year 2017. They're a new class of multi-vector polymorphic cyber threats that combine several types of attacks and change the form to avoid cybersecurity controls as they spread. These threats have been classified as fifth-generation cyber attacks. Phishing is an old form of an attempt to acquire sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, and credit card details directly from users by deceiving the users. Phishing is typically carried out by email spoofing or instant messaging, and it often directs users to enter details at a fake website whose look and feel are almost identical to the legitimate one. The fake website often asks for personal information such as login details and passwords. This information can then be used to gain access to the individual's real account on the real website. Preying on a victim's trust, phishing can be classified as a form of social engineering. Attackers using creative ways to gain access to real accounts. A common scam is for attackers to send fake electronic invoices to individuals showing that they recently purchased music, apps, or other services, and instructing them to click on the link if the purchases were not authorized. There is a form of privilege escalation that describes a situation where an attacker with some level of restricted access is able to, without authorization, elevate their privileges to the access level. For example, a standard computer may be used to exploit a vulnerability in the system to gain access to restricted data, or even become root and have full unrestricted access to a system. The many coders who are masters of reverse engineering, which is the process by which man-made object is demonstrated to reveal its design, code, architecture, or to extract knowledge from the object. Similar to scientific research, the only difference being the scientific research is about a natural phenomenon. Now, moving on to social engineering. Social engineering in the context of computer security aims to convince a user to disclose secrets such as passwords, code numbers, etc., or grant physical access by, or for example, impersonating a senior executive at a bank, or a contractor, or a customer, defense contractor, etc. This generally involves exploiting people's trust and relying on their cognitive biases. Common scam involves emails sent to accounting and finance department personnel impersonating their CEO and urgently requesting some action. In the year 2016, the Federal Bureau of Investigation reported that such business email compromise, or BEC scams, had cost U.S. businesses more than a staggering $2 billion in about 2 years. Following in the year, in May 2016, there was a team, an NBA team, which fell victim to this type of cyber scam, where the perpetrator impersonated the team's president, and this resulted in handover of all the team's employees' tax forms. Spoofing. Spoofing is the act of masquerading as a valid entity through falsification of data, such as an IP address or username, in order to gain access to information or resources that one is otherwise unauthorized to obtain. There are several types of spoofing. There can be email spoofing, IP address spoofing, MAC spoofing, and biometric spoofing. Email spoofing is where an attacker forges the sending from or source address of an email. IP address spoofing is where an attacker alters the source IP address in a network packet to hide their identity or to impersonate other computer systems. Media access control, or MAC spoofing, is where an attacker modifies the MAC address of the network interface to obscure their identity or to pose as a different MAC address. A biometric spoofing is where an attacker produces a fake biometric sample, your fingerprint, your retina scan, etc., to pose as another user. Now we can move on to tampering, which describes the malicious modification or alteration of data. So-called evil-made attacks, and security services planting of surveillance capability into routers are some of the notorious examples. Malware, very common technical jargon circulating in the media these days. Malware, malicious software, malware installed in a computer. They can leak your personal information. They can give control of the system to the attacker and can delete data permanently.
In computer protection or computer security, there's a countermeasure. This countermeasure is an action, a device, procedure, or technology that reduces the threat of vulnerability or an attack by eliminating or preventing it, by minimizing the harm it can cause, or by discovering and reporting it so that corrective action can be taken. Some common countermeasures first can be a security by design. Security by design, or alternatively secure by design, means that the software has been designed from ground up to be secure. In this case, security is considered as the main feature. There is the principle of least privilege, where each part of the system has only privileges that are needed for its function. That way, even if an attacker gains access to that part, they have only limited access to the whole system. Automated theorem proves the correctness of crucial software subsystems. Code reviews and unit testing approaches make modules more secure, where formal correctness proofs are not possible. Defense in depth is where the design is such that more than one subsystem needs to be violated to compromise the integrity of the system and the information it holds. Default secure settings and design to fail secure rather than fail insecure, they can be seen as a fail-safe mechanism for the equivalent in safety engineering. Ideally, a secure system should require a deliberate, conscious, knowledgeable, and free decision on the part of legitimate authorities in order to make it insecure. Then we have cyber audit trails. They track system activity so that when a security breach occurs, the mechanism and extent of the breach can be determined, storing cyber audit trails remotely where they can only be appended to and can keep intruders from covering their tracks. Full disclosure of all vulnerabilities to ensure that the window of vulnerability is kept as short as possible when bugs are discovered. Security architecture. Now, the Open Security Architecture Organization defines IT security architecture as the design artifacts that describe how the security controls, security countermeasures are positioned, and how they relate to the overall information technology architecture. These controls serve the purpose to maintain the system's quality attributes, confidentiality, integrity, availability, accountability, and assurance services. Techopedia defines the security architecture as a unified security design that addresses the necessities and potential risks involved in a certain scenario or environment. It also specifies when and where to apply security controls. The design process is generally reproducible. The key attributes of security architecture are the relationship of different components and how they depend on each other. The determination of controls based on risk assessment, good practice, finances, and legal matters. The standardization of controls. Practicing security architecture provides the right foundation to systematically address businesses' IT security concerns in an organization. Now, some security measures. State of computer security is the conceptual ideal. It is the conceptual ideal attained by the use of three processes: threat prevention, detection, and response. These processes are based on various policies and system components, which include the following. They can be a user account access control and cryptography. They can protect systems, files, and data, respectively. We have firewalls. Firewalls are by far the most common prevention systems from a network of security perspectives, as they can, if properly configured, shield access to internal network services and block certain kind of attacks. Through packet filtering, firewalls can both be hardware or software based. Then we have IDS, intrusion detection system, which which is produced and designed to detect network attacks in progress and assist in post-attack forensics, while audit trails and logs serve as a similar function for individual systems. Response. A response is necessarily defined by the assessed security requirements of an individual system and may cover the range from simply upgrading of protections to notifications to legal authorities, counterattacks, and the like. In some special cases, the complete destruction of the compromised system is favored, as it may happen that not all the compromised resources are detected. Today, computer security compromises mainly preventive measures like firewalls and exit procedure. Firewall can be defined as a way of filtering network data between the host or a network and other network, such as the internet, and can be implemented as a software running on the machine, hooking into the network stack, or in case of most Unix-based operating systems such as Linux, built into the operating system kernel to provide real-time filtering and blocking. Another implementation is a so-called physical firewall, which consists of a separate machine filtering network traffic. Firewalls are common amongst machines that are permanently connected to the internet. Now, some organizations are turning to big data platforms such as Apache Hadoop to extend data accessibility and machine learning to detect advanced persistent threats. However, relatively few organizations maintain computer systems with effective detection systems, and few still have organized responses mechanisms in place. As a result, media publication Reuters points out companies for the first time report they are losing more through electronic theft of data than physical stealing of assets. The primary obstacle to effective eradication of cybercrime could be traced to excessive reliance on firewalls and other automated detection systems, yet it is basic evidence gathering by using packet capture appliances that puts criminals behind bars. In order to ensure adequate security, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of a network, better known as the CIA triad, must be protected and is considered the foundation to information security. To achieve these objectives, administrative, physical, and technical security measures should be implemented. The amount of security afforded to an asset can only be determined when its value is known. We move on to vulnerability management. Vulnerability management is the cycle of identifying and remediating or mitigating vulnerabilities, especially in software and firmware. Vulnerability management is integral to computer security and network security. Vulnerabilities can be discovered with a vulnerability scanner, which analyzes a computer system in search of known vulnerabilities, such as open ports, insecure software configuration, and susceptibility to malware. In order for these tools to be effective, they must be kept up to date with every new update from the vendor's release. Typically, these updates will scan for the new vulnerabilities that were introduced recently. Moving beyond, we have vulnerability scanning. And looking ahead, there are many organizations that contract outside security cyber auditors to run regular penetration tests against their systems to identify vulnerabilities. In some sectors, this is a contractual requirement. Now, to reduce the vulnerabilities, formal verification of the correctness of computer systems is possible. It is not yet common. Operating systems formally verify and make these systems, and these systems that verify the system OS, for example, the operating system that does this is Cisco and Pike OS, but these make up a very small percentage of the market because these operating systems, they formally verify the correctness of computer systems to reduce the vulnerabilities. So Cisco and Pike OS, but there are more companies which are developing these kind of variations into the OS. Then we have multi-factor authentication, which is a method for mitigating unauthorized access to a system or sensitive information. It requires something you know, a password or a PIN, and something you have, a card, dongle, cell phone, or another piece of hardware. This increases security as an unauthorized person needs both of these to gain access. Social engineering and direct computer access or physical attacks can only be prevented if you can use non-computer means, which can be difficult to enforce relative to the sensitivity of the information. Training is often involved to help maintain the risk, but even in highly disciplined environments, example military organizations, social engineering attacks can still be difficult to foresee and prevent. Two-factor authentication is a method for mitigating unauthorized access to a system or sensitive information. It requires something you know, a password or a PIN, and something you have, a card, dongle, cell phone, or another piece of hardware. This increases security as an unauthorized person needs both of these to gain access. Social engineering and direct computer access physical attacks can only be prevented by non-computer means, which can be difficult to enforce relative to sensitivity of the information. Training is often involved to help mitigate this risk, but even the highly disciplined environments, like military organizations, social engineering attacks can still be difficult to foresee and prevent. Inoculation, which is derived from inoculation theory, it seeks to prevent social engineering and other fraudulent tricks or traps by instilling a resistance to persuasion attempts through exposure to similar or related attempts. It is possible to reduce an attacker's chances by keeping systems up to date with security patches and updates, using a security scanner, or hiring people with expertise in security, though none of these guarantee the prevention of an attack. The effects of data loss damage can be reduced by carefully backing up and through cyber insurance. Hardware protection mechanisms. While hardware may be a source of insecurity, such as with microchip vulnerabilities maliciously introduced during the manufacturing process, hardware-based assisted computer security also offers an alternative to software-only computer security, using devices and methods such as dongles, trusted platform modules, intrusion-aware cases, drive locks, disabling USB ports, and mobile-enabled access may be considered more secure due to the physical access or sophisticated backdoor access required in order to be compromised. Each of these can be covered in detail. When we look at the USB dongles, they're typically used in software licensing schemes to unlock software capabilities. But they can also be seen as a way to prevent unauthorized access to computer or other devices' software. The dongle or key essentially creates a secure encrypted tunnel between the software application and the key. The principle is that an encryption scheme on the dongle, such as Advanced Encryption Standard, AES, used by banks, provides a stronger measure of securing, since it is harder to hack and replicate the dongle than to simply copy the native software to another machine and use it. Another security application for dongles is to use them for accessing web-based content such as cloud software or virtual private networks. In addition, a USB dongle can be configured to look at a computer in order to lock and unlock the system. Then we have Trusted Platform Modules, TPMs. TPMs, they secure devices by integrating cryptographic capabilities onto access devices through the use of microprocessors, or so-called computers on a chip. TPMs may be used in conjunction with server-side software to offer a way to detect and authenticate hardware devices, preventing unauthorized network and data access. Computer case intrusion detection. It refers to a device, typically a push-button switch, which detects when a computer case is opened. The firmware or the BIOS is programmed to show an alert to the operator when the computer is booted up the next time. Drive locks are essentially software tools to encrypt hard drives, making them inaccessible to thieves, cyber thieves, and tools exist specifically for encrypting its own drives as well. Disabling USB ports is a security option for preventing unauthorized and malicious access to an otherwise secure computer. Infected USB dongles connected to a network from a computer inside the firewall are considered by the magazine Network World as the most common hardware threat facing computer networks. Disconnecting or disabling peripheral devices like camera, GPS, removable storage, etc. that are not in use is one of the ways to suppress cyber espionage or cyber surveillance. Mobile-enabled access devices are growing in popularity due to the ubiquitous nature of cell phones. They have built-in capabilities such as Bluetooth, the newer Bluetooth Low Energy, LE, Near-Field Communication, NFC, and on non-iOS devices, we also have biometric validation, such as thumbprint readers as well as QR code reader software designed for safe access. They also offer new secure ways for mobile phones to connect to access control systems. These control systems provide computer security and can also be used for controlling access to secure buildings. Moving on to secure operating systems. One use of the term computer security refers to technology that is used to implement secure operating systems. In the year 1980s, the United States Department of Defense, DoD, they used the Orange Book standard. Now, what is the Orange Book standard? It is the current international standard, ISO IEC 15408, common criteria, which defines a number of progressively more stringent evaluation assurance level. Many common operating systems meet the EAL4 standard of being methodically designed, tested, and reviewed, but the normal verification required for the highest level means that they are uncommon. An example of an EAL6 semi-formally verified, designed, and tested system is Integrity 178B, which is used in the Airbus A380 aircraft and several military jets. What is secure coding? Secure coding in software engineering aims to guard against the accidental introduction of security vulnerabilities. It is also possible to create software designed from ground up to be secure. Such systems are secure by design. Beyond this, formal verification aims to prove the correctness of the algorithms underlying a system. Important for cryptographic protocols, for example. What are the capabilities and access control lists? Within the computer systems, we have two main security models capable of enforcing privilege separation. One is access control lists, or ACLs, and the other is role-based access control, or RBAC. An access control list, or ACL, with respect to a computer file system, is a list of permissions associated with an object. An ACL specifies which users or system processes are granted access to objects, as well as what operations are allowed on given objects. Role-based access control is an approach to restrict system access to authorized users, used by the majority of enterprises with more than 500 employees, and it can be implemented through mandatory access control, MAC, or discretionary access control, DAC. A further approach, which is the capability-based security, that has been mostly restricted to research operating systems. Capabilities can, however, also be implemented at the language level, leading to a style of programming that is essentially a refinement of standard object-oriented design. An open source project in the area is the E-language, and then we have the end-user security training. Now, the end user is widely recognized as the weakest link in the security chain, and it is estimated that more than 90% of the security incidents and breaches involve some kind of human error. Among the most commonly recorded forms of errors and misjudgment are poor password management, sending emails containing sensitive data and attachments to the wrong recipient, the inability to recognize misleading URLs and to identify fake websites, and dangerous email attachments. A common mistake that users make is saving their user ID and password in their browsers to make it easier to log into banking sites. This is a gift to attackers who have obtained access to the machine by some means. This risk may be mitigated by the use of multi-factor authentication. As the human component of cyber risk is particularly relevant in determining the global cyber risk, an organization is facing security awareness training at all levels not only provides formal compliance with regulatory and industry mandates, but is considered essential in reducing cyber risk and protecting individuals and companies from the great majority of cyber threats. The focus on the end user represents a profound cultural change for many security practitioners who have traditionally approached cybersecurity exclusively from a technical perspective, and moves along the lines suggested by major security centers to develop a culture of cyber awareness within the organization, recognizing that a security-aware user provides an important line of defense against cyber attacks. Digital hygiene. See, related to end-user training, digital hygiene or cyber hygiene is a fundamental principle relating to information security. As the analogy with personal hygiene shows, it is equivalent of establishing simple routine measure to minimize the risks from cyber threats. The assumption is that good cyber hygiene practices can give network users another layer of protection, reducing the risk that one vulnerable node will be used to either mount attacks or compromise another node or network, especially from common cyber attacks. As opposed to purely technology-based defense against threats, cyber hygiene mostly regards routine measures that are technically simple to implement and mostly dependent on discipline or education. It can be thought of as an abstract list of tips or measures that have been demonstrated as having a positive effect on personal and or collective digital security. As such, these measures can be performed by laypeople, not just security experts. Cyber hygiene relates to personal hygiene, as computer viruses relate to biological viruses or pathogens. However, while the term computer virus was coined almost simultaneously with the creation of the first working computer virus, the term hygiene is much later invention, perhaps as late as 2000, by Internet pioneer Vint Cerf. It has been adopted by the Congress and Senate of the United States, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and European Union institutions and heads of state. Cyber hygiene should also not be mistaken for protective cyber defense, or military term. Okay. Now, what is the response to breaches? Cyber breaches. Responding to attempted security breaches is often very difficult for a variety of reasons, including identifying attackers is difficult as they may operate all the proxies, temporary anonymous dial-up accounts, wireless connections, and other anonymizing procedures, which make backtracking difficult and are often located in another jurisdiction. If they successfully breach security, they have also often gained enough administrative access to enable them to delete logs to cover the tracks. The sheer number of attempted cyber attacks, often by automated vulnerability scanners and computer worms, is so large that organizations cannot spend time pursuing each. Law enforcement officers from the FBI and NSA also need to continuously upgrade their skills, interest, or budget to pursue attackers. In addition to the identification of attackers across a network, this may require logs from various points in the network and in many countries, which may be difficult or time-consuming to obtain. Where an attack succeeds, a breach occurs. Where a cyber attack succeeds, a cyber breach occurs. And many jurisdictions have now been put in place they've put in place mandatory security breach notification laws. So they've put in place mandatory cybersecurity breach notification laws. Now, what are some of the types of cybersecurity and privacy? We have access control, we have anti-keyloggers, anti-malware, anti-spyware, anti-subversion software, anti-tampering software, anti-theft software, antivirus software, end-to-end protection software. We have cryptographic software, computer-aided dispatch, CAD software, firewalls, intrusion detection systems or IDSs. We have intrusion prevention systems or IPSs. We have log management software. We have parental controls. For children, we have records management, sandboxing, security information management, SEM platforms. We have SOAR platforms. We have software and operating system updates, regular patches. Now, what is incident response planning? Incident response is an organization's approach to address and manage the aftermath of a computer security incident or compromise with the goal of preventing a breach or thwarting a cyber attack. An incident that is not identified and managed at the time of intrusion typically escalates to a more damaging event, such as a cyber data breach or system failure. The intended outcome of a computer security incident response plan is to limit damage and reduce recovery time and costs. Responding to compromises quickly can mitigate exploited vulnerabilities, restore services, and process and minimize losses. Incident response planning allows an organization to establish a series of best practices to stop an intrusion before it causes damage. Typical incident response plans contain a set of written instructions that outline the organization's response to a cyber attack. Without a documented plan in place, an organization may not successfully detect an intrusion or compromise, and stakeholders may not understand their roles, processes, and procedures during an escalation, slowing the organization's response and resolution. So there are four key components of computer security incident response plan. First is preparation, followed by detection and analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, and post-incident activity. Cyber preparation is preparing stakeholders on the procedures for handling computer security incidents or compromises. Detection and analysis, identifying and investigating suspicious activity to confirm a security incident, prioritizing the responses based on impact and coordinating notification of the incident. Containment, eradication, and recovery, isolating affected systems to prevent escalation and limit impact, pinpointing the genesis of the incident, removing malware, affected systems, and bad actors from the environment, and restoring systems and data when a threat no longer remains. Post-incident activity. Now, a post-mortem analysis of an incident, which is the root cause and the organization's response with the intent of improving the incident response plan and the future response efforts.
A quick recapitulation of the cyber terminologies. First, access authorization. Access authorization restricts access to a computer to a group of users through the use of authentication systems. These systems can protect either the whole computer, such as through an interactive login screen, or individual services, such as a file transfer protocol server. There are many methods for identifying and authenticating users, such as passwords, identification cards, smart cards, and biometric systems, facial recognition, iris recognition, retina scan, etc. Then we have antivirus software, which consists of computer programs that attempt to identify, thwart, and eliminate computer viruses and other malicious software, like malware. Applications are executable code. In general practice, it is to disallow users the power to install them, to install only those which are known to be reputable, and to reduce the attack surface by installing as few as possible. They are typically run with the least privilege, with a robust process in place to identify, test, and install any released security patches or updates for them. Authentication techniques can be used to ensure that communication endpoints are who they say they are. Automated theorem proving. These are verification tools that can enable critical algorithms and code used in secure systems to be mathematically proven to meet their specifications. Computer backups are one or more copies kept of important computer files. Typically, multiple copies will be kept at different locations, so if the copy is stolen or damaged, other copies will still exist. Capability and access control list techniques can be used to ensure privilege separation and mandatory access control. Capabilities versus ACLs often discuss their uses. There is a chain of trust technique that can be used to attempt to ensure that all software loaded has been certified as authentic by systems designers. Confidentiality is the non-disclosure of information except to another authorized person. Cryptographic techniques can be used to defend data in transit between systems, reducing the probability that data exchanges between systems can be intercepted or modified. Cyber warfare is an internet-based conflict that involves politically and strategically motivated attacks on information and information systems. Such attacks, for example, disable official websites and networks, disrupt or disable essential services, steal or alter classified data, and cripple financial systems. Now, there is a growing concern that cyberspace will become the next theater of warfare. It has already become a battlefield. And as Mark Clayton from the Christian Science Monitor described in an article titled "The New Cyber Arms Race," in future wars will not just be fought by soldiers with guns or with planes that drop bombs. They will also be fought with the click of a mouse, half a world away, that unleashes carefully weaponized computer programs that disrupt or destroy critical industries like utilities, transportation, communications, and energy. Cyberkinetic attacks. Such attacks could also disable military networks that control the movement of troops, the path of a fighter jet, and command and control of warships. This definition dates back to the 2000, from the year 2000. So, moving ahead, we have data integrity. Data integrity is the accuracy and consistency of stored data, indicated by an absence of any alteration in data between two updates of a data record. Cryptographic techniques often involve transforming information, scrambling it, or so that it becomes unreadable during transmission. The intended recipient can unscramble the message. Ideally, eavesdroppers cannot. So encryption is used to protect the confidentiality of a message. Cryptographically secure ciphers are designed to make any practice attempt of breaking them infeasible. Symmetric key ciphers are suitable for bulk encryption using standard keys and public key encryption using digital certificates. They can provide a practical solution for the problem of securely communicating when no key is shared in advance. Endpoint security. Software that aids networks in preventing malware infection and data theft at network entry points made vulnerable by the prevalence of potentially infected devices such as laptops, smartphones, and USB drives. Firewalls serve as a gatekeeper system between networks, allowing only traffic that matches defined rules. They often include logging and may include intrusion detection and intrusion prevention features. They are near universal between company local area networks and the internet, but can also be used internally to post traffic rules between networks if the network segmentation is configured. A hacker is someone who seeks to breach defenses and exploit weaknesses in a computer system or network. Honeypots are computers that are intentionally left vulnerable to attack by crackers. They can be used to catch crackers and to identify their techniques. Intrusion detection systems are devices or software applications that monitor networks or systems for malicious activity or policy violations. A microkernel is an approach to operating system design which has only the near minimum amount of code running at the most privileged level and runs other elements of the operating system such as device drivers, protocol stacks, and file systems in the safer, less privileged user space. Pinging is the standard ping application that can be used to test if an IP address is in use. If the attackers may then try a port scan to detect which services are exposed. A port scan is used to probe an IP address for open ports to identify accessible network services and applications. A keylogger is a spyware, silently capturing and storing each keystroke that a user types on the computer's keyboard. Social engineering is the use of deception to manipulate individuals to breach security. And logic bombs, LBs. Logic bomb is a type of malware added to a legitimate program that lies dormant until it is triggered by a specific event.
Cyber incidents can have a significant and at times existential impact on an organization. The cause can be surprisingly simple. So simple, in fact, that it can be a singular security blind spot. One individual trying to gain access to data or an employee misplacing a USB. Cybersecurity system weakness combined with human error often makes it relatively easy for cyber threat actors to penetrate IT systems, access valuable data, and severely impact an organization's stakeholder trust and reputation. At its most significant, a cyber incident has the potential to cripple an organization's operations. The threat actors in cybersecurity can be individuals, issues-motivated groups, criminal syndicates, and state-sponsored actors who undertake unauthorized activity on networks, generally for financial or strategic gain. Various typologies of threat actors have been developed which classify actors according to their cyber capabilities, levels of sophistication and motivation. Of these, the most sophisticated state-based actors frequently demonstrate the highest level of scope, skills, and resources. However, in recent years, the tools created or used by state-based threat actors have also been increasingly available to cybercriminal syndicates. The theft of an organizational data, including via ransomware, has emerged as a key cyber threat element. Criminal groups steal an organization's valuable data and frequently render systems inoperable by encrypting the key data. They then extort their victims, demanding payment for the unlocking of systems and return of the valuable data. Storing large amounts of sensitive customer and organizational data beyond the legislative requirement creates a significant risk to customers and the organization, as it serves as a valuable target for cybercriminals looking to steal and use that information. To minimize the risk of data theft, most organizations should also collect and store the minimum amount of personal information that is legally required for its relevant services or operations. For example, some data may be necessary for point-in-time only, example, onboarding or know your client verification activities, and they can be deleted later on after certain activities have been accomplished. Importantly, many organizations fail to secure, delete, or destroy